Hi, it's Keir Bates here, and today I thought I would have a shot at explaining hash-linked lists, because hash-linked lists form the backbone of blockchains, and without them it would not be possible to make them tamper-proof. And I'm going to try and do so without using any technical or computer terms. So a while back I was visiting a Cambridge college, and they had a very interesting kind of port wine. What the college had done about 150 years ago is get a double-sized barrel, so 450-litre barrel, and filled it up with port wine. And then the next year they drained off half the barrel and bottled it into 300 bottles, and then they topped it up with that year's vintage of port. And they did this every year for 150 years. So every year they were getting 300 new bottles of port wine and replacing the stuff that they'd taken away with new port. And what this meant was that when I got a glass of this wine to drink, I was drinking something that was made up of half last year's vintage, and a quarter the year before's vintage, and an eighth the year before that, and a 16th, and so on. So interestingly enough, there was a little bit of port in that glass that was 150 years old. Not very much, but just a trace. And if you think about this, so the college wine cellar has basically a library of all these bottles with the years marked on them down in their cellar. Now, imagine a situation where you wanted to replace a particular year's bottle with a fake. That's going to be really hard to do, because in a sense you have a history of the development of this wine stored in the cellar, one rack of bottles for each year. And let's say you could get your hand on some of the bottles from the year before the one that you want to replace. You could use that, and you could put half of that bottle into a new bottle and then top it up with some other vintage of port, and at that point it would still look kind of convincing that you know, the bottle that you faked, it has all the presence of all the previous bottles in it. So that's great. The problem you have, however, is that as soon as they open the next year's bottle and compare it to your bottle, they can tell that something's wrong, provided you have a very good wine taster on your staff, because all the bottles leading up to your fake are present in your fake, but the bottles that come after it don't match your bottle anymore. So in order to fake, say, a bottle from 1978, you would have to replace all the 1979, 1980, all the bottles leading up to the present day. You can't just take one bottle out and replace it. Everything that comes after it has to be replaced too. And as a result, the earlier the date of the bottle of wine that you want to fake, the harder it is to fake it. So this library of all these vintages of this mixed port wine are effectively the equivalent of a hash-linked list. And comparing back to blockchain, trying to replace a bottle in the library of wines is like trying to replace a block, and namely that the earlier the block was added to the chain, the harder and harder it gets as time goes on to replace it. Anyway, so I hope this wine analogy makes sense to you and gives you some kind of sense as to how a hash-linked list works. And I'll see you again tomorrow in the next video. Bye for now.